Hey guys, in this week's tip, we're going to focus on a new module called QuickStore that has been derived specifically for the increased demand in e-commerce opportunities with existing SMS stores. Now, as a result of this increased demand, we've created a system that rides on the backbone of our LOC cloud servers and allows stores to implement this type of e-commerce application in almost the blink of an eye. So in a nutshell, what QuickStore is, it's a streamlined version of our standard e-commerce application called eStore, and in this streamlined version, it's meant to communicate with existing SMS installations, virtually any installation today that is PCI compliant. So that's like version 3.41 and forward. Now, because this streamlined version is just that, streamlined, you're going to see that not all the feature and functionality of the typical eStore model is going to be available in QuickStore. So we're going to go through the functionality that is available, and we're also going to talk briefly about the functionality that is not there, so there is no confusion. Now, the real key to this particular new module is that one, it is actually working off of the SMS cloud services that are based on Microsoft Azure platform. So they have SQL Azure and a whole bunch of other whiz-bang gadgets that allow for high bandwidth, high throughput connectivity. Now, just because this streamlined application resides on LOC cloud servers doesn't mean that you have the three main advantages that come with e-commerce from LOC software. The e-commerce website and the browser-based application will both be branded with your logo. They will also be tied directly to your item file and pricing structure. And finally, they will also flow right back into standard reporting as a virtual lane within your stores. So without further ado, let's take this new module for a test drive. All right, so I've loaded up my QuickStore desktop version here. So this is a standard e-commerce website. Let's go through some of the features and functionalities that you see here on the screen. So let's review a few things. First of all, this logo up here, that's going to be yours. Your branding is going to come in there. This carousel image, that can also be yours. I'm going to get you some specifications on those images in just a second here so that for those of you that want to get started a bit quicker are able to do so. Next, you'll see some very basic text here. Now, if this were up to me, I would say no on the basic text. And the reason for that is the link for this site that you see here is going to come from your existing website. You're just going to have to place a link on that with a URL that's going to point to the LOC Cloud server. It's going to be lockcloud.yourstore.com or something to that effect. You don't really need this type of text here, introductory text. And the reason is this can slow things down if people don't agree on what it is that we should be saying here. But what you could have for sure is right down here, featured products. In a future video, I'm going to show you how to set this up. It really hasn't changed from other eStore videos that I've done for you in the past, but I'll just refresh your memory and we'll go over some of the more advanced techie stuff in a later video. Let's take note of another thing. Look at our ribbon bar up here. There's not a whole heck of a lot up here. Now, when you see Richard, Pat, or I do our demos on this, you see a whole slew of information up here and options for us to go through. This, we don't really have much. Home and shopping. We'll come back to shopping in just a second. So notice, this is where the feature set gets reduced. You can obviously search on any product, brand, description, that sort of a thing up here like you normally would. Even in the phone application piece, the browser-based phone application piece, you could use the camera on the back of the phone, or even a tablet for that matter, to scan that barcode. More on that, though, in just a second, too. Couple other things to note. Look right up here. Basket only. We have no way to log in or sign in. That's because everything done in this version of QuickStore is done what we call anonymously, meaning there is no customer registration. They can't log in. You don't know who the customer is until they fill out the form to ship it. That still doesn't link to your customer file at this point. But again, I'm going to show you in just a little bit about how we can resume this order at the POS and bring in some of that functionality. So let's look at a couple other things that we can do before we start looking at those elements that we cannot do in this version called QuickStore. So look right down here. All the item information that you have, the descriptions, the pricing, all of that will flow through in a normal batched environment like you do for any standardized lane. Let's talk a little bit about the pictures for a second because I know that's one of those sticking points for sure. All right, so while we're talking about images and pictures, I went ahead and brought up a cheat sheet here that we'll share with each of you that need it. The first section up here is about the actual application logo images. You can see the pixel size right here for the desktop version, and down here is going to be for, actually here's for the desktop version, this is for the browser-based phone application version. Now, a couple things to note. If you're not good with images, just give it to the folks that are. They'll understand what this 1024 by 1024 and all that sort of stuff means, and down here the 244 by 107. They'll also understand that we're not looking for images with rounded corners or anything sexy or flashy or anything like that. Just a square image. Make sure that the logo and the text, if you're going to use text, is nice and big so that customers can see it. Now the other piece, that carousel image that we saw that has the girl on my front page there, here's the image specification for that. It's a little different for both the desktop and the mobile, so you're going to need a few different images, and there's a naming convention for telling the difference between those. But you can see the sizes here. Again, if you don't know what these are, just share them with your graphics folks, and they'll be able to get those images. So if you're in a hurry and wish to move forward quickly, get them this information here, and they can go ahead and get those graphics displayed. Now on your product images, this is where it gets a little bit difficult. This is why we hopped over here. You can see the pixel size requirement required for product images. If you don't have product images already today for your store, whether it be flip chart stuff or just other stuff that you're doing on the web or in your ads or things like that, this may not be worth your time. It may just be easier to get standard sub-department images and throw up there in the 300 by 300 sizing. That may just be the simplest way to do it. If you do have product images available, they do have to be resized to 300 by 300 pixels, and then those could be implemented into your sample that would be out there on LOC Cloud. Okay, now with some of that out of the way, let's look at more of some of the stuff we can do. Now your featured items, I'll show you how to do that later, but let's just assume you know how to do that. You can see the pricing is coming from your standard price file. If we wanted to add something to the cart, just bing, bing, bing. And you can see the items are showing adding up to the cart. My cart is increasing just like you would see on any standard e-commerce site. So let's take a little bit of look at the shopping tab. So let's take a quick look at what's under the shopping option here on our ribbon bar. You can see it's pretty much the standard setup that we have for eStore. Now, basically what that means, it defaults to the entire item file out front. So this is my item number 1 and it goes all the way to the end. You do have the ability to search and browse a little bit. In this case, these are subdepartments. And if I click on my beer subdepartment, you'll see I'm going to get a couple actual categories here. So I've got cases and singles. So your customers will be able to drill down a little bit. You'll also be able to utilize some of the branding functionality if you have that database in your system. But for sure, the filtering capability has been limited. It's been streamlined down so that we can get these items rolled out quicker. Just like before and what you're used to, if I wanted to add an item, just click the add item and you're going to see that it goes ahead and adds that to the cart. Now let's go back home here and talk about some of the items and functions that aren't included in this version called QuickStore. All right, so this is the part of the show where we got to tell you some of those standard features and functions that you're used to in eStore and MStore aren't available in this new slimmed down version called QuickStore. The reason is, remember, this application is meant to be rolled out quickly, less decisions, less complexity, less flexibility, so that we can get these things rolled out in days rather than weeks and months. So in this specific scenario, these are the elements that aren't included. There will not be any visible online loyalty. None of that will be visible here, and the reason is we're not logging in customers. So I'm not going to be able to show points or clubs or any of those sorts of things that they're enrolled in your normal store environment. Now that doesn't mean they cannot exist, because what's going to happen on the rear end of this thing, the order is going to be resumed in the back office, either processed through sales order or processed at the POS. If you process it at the POS, it's going to flow through if the customer signs in however it is they normally do with their customer number. So they'll get their points, they'll get all their club information, they'll get any spending that you're tracking, any coupons that they would normally get, SMS e-coupons, all of that stuff will show and work if resumed at the POS. In this environment though, because we're not live with the transaction file, we're not live with the customer file, those pieces aren't going to work. Other elements not included, digital CPG coupons. So if you have any links to Inmar or some of those types of guys, those coupons will not be showing up on the website. Similar to the loyalty though, if the customer shows up at the POS and provides their customer number, signs in however it is they normally would, those CPG coupons could flow through like any normal transaction. One other function that's been asked about, there will not be any saved shopping lists in this environment here. And the reason is we have no registration. I've said that now a couple times. The customers aren't logging in. They're not able to sign up for your loyalty program. None of that stuff works. So there isn't a way for us to save grocery lists to the customer file. And last but not least, you'll see that we don't have the online flyer that we can choose and pick items from. That piece will not be included as well. So enough about what's not included. Let's go ahead and finish this order out, transact it, and let me show you the back end on the POS side. So let's go ahead and go into our basket here. We can see the items that we have picked for sale here. We're going to go ahead and proceed to checkout. Notice the only option we have is to go ahead and proceed to checkout. So that should be pretty standard. The customer then is going to have to fill in their name. I'm going to go ahead and do this on the form real quick in Google. Fill in their name, address, email, phone number, all that sort of a thing. Now, a couple things here. When we're done with this, the customer is going to get a confirmation to this email address. So that's going to go out to them for sure. What you might want to consider as well, what my local stores are doing is asking for the cell phone number here, and this could be changed to cell if need be, or just recommend the customers put their cell phone number in, because you would be able to text them. Now, this isn't going to have anything to do with SMS, but you could text the customer and them text you when they arrive at the store. So that might be a good idea. If we go ahead and hit next step, we can see what we're going to come to. In my case, I only have pickup only. You could do delivery if you wish. You will have to provide us those days and times that delivery and pickup are available. That's part of the process that we'll show you here in just a second as well. But you can see I'm going to select pickup. I'm going to pick my day. I'm going to have my time slot here. I'm going to pick 11 a.m., go to my next step. And of course, it's going to be tender here, or actually payment. And in this environment, what we're doing as I'm trying to type in all these numbers and try to talk to you at the same time, what we're doing in this environment is that simply using a card as a validation to see if it's a real card. There won't be any payment taken. This number won't be saved, nothing like that. So this is more of a deterrent factor to let customers know that they can't be placing huge orders online with no kind of risk to not coming in and picking that stuff up. The customers won't know that this isn't being tendered out. They will see that they're putting in their card and that we're going to say, hey, yep, it's a real live card. When they go to the next step, it's going to say, hey, invalid card number if it doesn't work. If it's a valid card number, it will go through. I just have to figure out what my number is, and I think it's this one here. So that's a good little step to see that we're not necessarily using this as tender, but as validation and a deterrent for the customers. The final step in the process for the customers, obviously just confirming everything that they just put in. They're going to go ahead and place their order. The system is going to process and it's going to say, hey, Mr. Customer, we sent an email confirmation of this particular order number to that email address you supplied. So the last element I want to show you on the customer UI before we hop into the back office and show you that piece of it is that if a customer accesses your website on their mobile phone or maybe a smaller tablet, they're going to get a slimmed down or a shrunk down version because of the responsive system of QuickStore that looks like this. So it's going to be more set up for the phone. So just narrower a little bit. Going to have the same functionality as what we had on the e-commerce app. So there's a limited feature set. I can still add items and I can still do all that thing to my cart. The only difference that I wanted to go over here is this will not be a native app that you would get on the Google Play Store or the iPhone Store or any of that sort of a thing. All this is a browser-based version of the mobile application. You can see they can scan the products here and that will work with the camera that's on the phone or on the tablet, but the functionality itself is because it's a browser-based app, it is not a native version that you'll download from one of the company stores. So we're going to start off that review of what happens on the back end of the process on the ops side here with the email confirmation that goes out to the customer. This is the email that came to my address. It shows me everything that's ordered, and you're going to see any sort of information about payment down here in amounts, also the store information as well. Your logo or some other imagery that you would supply would be right up here as well. Now notice what's kind of cool, I'm able to capture the name from the form that the customer filled out. So that is showing some personalization. It's not perfect, but it is showing some personalization. All right, so the customer's been sent their email. They get that email, by the way, via Exchange FTP. So that's what we're using to communicate. That's how we can go back in prior times. You don't have to upgrade your store system because we're using functionality that's most likely already installed in that system. So the Exchange FTP sent that email out to the customer to confirm it. What you're going to do from a store perspective, into your sailing tab, into the extended module. Now let's talk a little bit about sales orders here. If you're not familiar with sales orders, we have done some of this in the past in previous videos, but basically what this is a catalogs type ordering system where customers in the old days would call in via a phone and they would say, hey, I want to order this, want to order this. You might be using this for some of your wholesale accounts, but that's basically what this is. So the website is communicating with the back end of your store via the sales order functionality. Now what you can see here is this sales order here, it's suspended. It hasn't done anything yet, and it's because it's this one right back here in this window. The customer's still working on it. We just did those two items on the phone app, and I brought it back up here so I can fill my screen. So this is just an order sitting there that the customer's waiting on. What happens with completed orders? We go over into sales order. We're going to hit list closed. Here are all the closed orders. Orders on the web, when they're completed by the customer, come across as closed sales orders within SMS. So in your version of SMS, you're going to go into the sale order system, you're going to see closed sales orders here, and away you go. Now what's cool about this particular approach is that you can come right over here to invoicing, And you can hit this button from orders. So it's going to suck in all of the closed orders. You can see I've done 3 for a little bit of testing as well. Here's the one that we did live while I'm with you guys. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Here's the deli meat and that pack of beer that we bought. Now, what's really cool about this setup is that we can edit this order on the fly too. The customer calls in or we have to do a substitution, something like that. And the reason why, I have access to my entire item file in the system. All I have to do to add something, just go ahead and double click it and it's going to add based off of that quantity. If I come back to lines, you can see it added some coffee to that as well. Now, the other useful piece about this functionality is printing a pick ticket. Now, yours is probably going to be located somewhere else. Mine is stuck right over here just for simplicity's sake. You can see if I go ahead and print this bad boy, what's going to happen is it's going to print up an in-store type of document to show me what I got to go gather for the customer. It's going to give me the order information, who the customer is, what it is that they bought, quantity, all that sort of thing. And it's also going to give me little check boxes over here that I can check as I'm going down the aisle to pick this up and prepare it to take it to the staging area. Now, you could potentially, at this case, go ahead and charge and close this order out. But in our scenario, what we're going to do, because I see a lot more stores most likely going this approach, the ones near me certainly are. They're going to suspend this order right here. They're going to go ahead and quit sales orders. I'm going to drag this back down in the center here so I can see it and hop over to POS and show you what we're going to do next. So at the POS, I'm probably going to do exactly what you're thinking. I have a function set up to resume sales orders. And when I hit that, I'm going to get the order that I brought over into the invoicing side of my sales order module. So that's the order that we've been working on here. If I go ahead and resume that order, you can see it pulls in that sales order into my POS. Now, this is one other key. Remember I told you we don't have the flexibility to do loyalty or special pricing or anything like that? Well, let me come back. I'm going to sign in my customer. And look, I'm a points-based customer, so my points showed up in this particular case because I'm working in with a standard POS. So your loyalty can work if you resume that order at the POS and the customer signs in like he or she normally would. The other nice thing about this approach, if I go ahead and hit subtotal, if I had any electronic coupons that were applicable, those would fire as well because I'm at the POS. Now, when I hit subtotal, you'll notice I have access to all my tenders that I would have normally in the store. So anything that you wish to do at the POS can be as a tender for this particular web order that we resumed. Now, one final element of this, I'm just going to go ahead and cash out. If you are one of those stores that have emails that go out to your customers, or if you want to turn that on at the end of the POS, you certainly may want to print one in this scenario, which we can do, but we can also email it to the customer because remember, we pulled in the customer. If their email is on file, you could email this receipt out